As a book lover, what would you do if you find yourself lacking concentration, sometimes time, or experiencing a lull when it comes to picking up books and finishing them? My only resort is short stories, especially if they talk about my favorite place and make me nostalgic. They are a great way to find my way back into reading. Hello everyone, welcome back to books.com with me Subhashini. In the upcoming episodes, I am going to share with you the writings of eminent writers across India from different languages. Eager to know more? Then you have to wait till the end of this episode. Goa, for commoners, means parties, alcohol, beaches, ferries, foreigners and merriment. But for me, it's a place where I learned how to enjoy my today without any fears of tomorrow. Hence, today's book is Teresas's Man and Other Stories from Goa. It's true that we Indians love Goa, but forget about Goans. In fact, I had never read anything written by a Goan author, though I was a resident there for 4 long years. That was 2 decades back. But then, it's rare that you come across Konkani translations, all thanks to Xaviercota. Teresas's Man and Other Stories from Goa is written by one of the most prolific and feted figures in contemporary Konkani literature, Damodar Mauzo, who is also a Sahitya Academy Awardee. As a novelist, literary critic and fiction writer, he has been writing since 1960s till the recent times. He writes in Konkani and is also proficient in Portuguese, English and Marathi. These 14 stories in translation comprise of Mozos' wonderfully varied compilation from across 4 decades, that is 1960s to 2010. While it's true that a few stories are set in the kind of village culture that doesn't exist anymore, but passing of time hasn't lessened the impact of Mozos' plots and characters. Just a sentence or two and you can't resist being drawn in. So, we get to sit among Goan politicians on a hedonistic break in New Delhi, accompany a Dalit cattle herder across the Karnataka border into Goa because he has been told you will live like a human there, and also drive around the back streets of Margao with enigmatic Baboy who knew only one thing, and that is accept everything with a laugh. The stories are either set in Goa or talk about Goan people. They are more an evocation of Goa through the names of characters, lifestyles and memories rather than being set in the place itself. While the stories don't explore Goan culture, they are mostly focused on people and their indelible emotions. The first story is set in Saudi Arabia. From the Mouths of Babes talks about the predicament of Mithila and Rajesh who live in Riyadh. It finally draws stream of thoughts flowing through the mind of Mithila, a young Goan woman, chafing under the strictures of the religious police even as she tries to evoke a more open display of physical affection from her husband. Khoinsan's Cattle is a heartbreaking depiction of how a farmer couple must make the impossible choice of either send their beloved animals to slaughter or face starvation. The dilemma of the wife who loves her cattle as a child is beautifully portrayed. Yet another story, Band, which is about the language agitation of the 1980s, reiterates the futility of rights. You tend to harm the very same people for whom you are protesting. Mauzo beautifully says, language is a vehicle to foster understanding. It's meant to unite, not to divide. In the story, the motorcycle pilot Dattaram is faced with an odd situation. On the day of Band, his friends Ketan and Peter warn him against seeking fares, but after a few hours, beg him to take Rosie to the temple at Fatorpa. In Goa, Hindus and Catholics freely pay respects to both traditions. They depart with Rosie's mother putting her hand on Dattaram's arm and saying, "Son, take care of my daughter and bring her back safely." But the two run into trouble. A dozen men block their way at Kankolam and try to kidnap Rosie. For a brief moment, Dattaram is tempted to leave. In the very next moment though, he sees Rosie's mother on one side and Shantadurga, the goddess, on the other. Dattaram wades into the group of thugs and manages to escape with Rosie. He rides straight into Kaitan's house, stops at the doorstep and dismounts. Alarmed Kaitan runs up to them. "What happened, Dattaram?" Dattaram's eyes were bulging. He was speechless. Finally, finding his voice, he spats out, "This is our language. This is our culture." It very well explores the behavior of people during Bandh versus the actual respect they have for people, which we could easily relate to because even today people protest for their mother tongue, failing to realize language is meant to bring people together, not to tear them apart. More than any other writer in contemporary Konkani literature, Mauzo epitomizes the multi-layered, profoundly confluent identity of Goans. He grew up in a Hindu family surrounded by Catholic neighbors in the gorgeous seaside village of Majoda, where the sense of community blurred all boundaries. Until recently, Mauzo made his living running the family general store, one-stop shopping for generations of Majoda residents, and he says his story ideas came to him in conversation with customers. That's why a deep empathy is reflected throughout Teresas's Man. And Mauzo often packs a substantial political punch on behalf of his people and their distinctive identity. In the Vignaharta story, a family is worried about the Chaturthi preparations amidst their financial crisis, and the Happy Birthday story is about parents who strive hard to fit in the society of performers with their slow-learning child. Now, coming to the titular story, Teresas's Man, we see how an ineffectual husband finally reaches his boiling point, how his frustration emerges in violence. Peter is constantly taunted by his mother because his wife is more successful than him. He doesn't even try to get a job or to do anything useful, and his male ego gets hurt when his friends tease him in a bar. He decides to physically take his shame and frustration out on his wife, rather than attempting to improve himself. This story depicts a psychological profile of a man who deliberately ignores his responsibilities and undergoes humiliation, highlighting the frustration, anger, and jealousy that he feels. The last story in this book is a writer's tale, where an aging writer, Manohar, and a young writer, Jayata, formulate a friendship in the background of Jayata's ordeal with her family, depression, and search for a friend, and how the senior author becomes the unwitting subject of Jayata's fiction. It may seem humorous on the onset, but the idea of a Tamil lady being portrayed as a wanton didn't excite me and felt more exaggerated. Old Hindi films have depicted South Indians as dim-witted and caricatures, which I completely don't agree with. I still can't understand why Mauzo fancied this idea in this story. Well, let me leave it here as this may lead to another discussion. His writing spans an enormous range, straddling both urban and rural geographies, and runs the gamut of human emotion. The paralyzing helplessness of the small farmer, the eternal ebbs and flows of the man-woman relationship, and many humiliations, small and large, of raising a differently abled child. Each story in this compilation gives a distinct flavor of Goa and what it means to be a Goan. Most of the stories have an old world charm about them, since they are written across the decades, giving you a nice, nostalgic feel. They are hardly 10 to 15 minute reads, but I wanted to know more in most of the stories, and since they were open-ended, I was left wanting for more. I do not know if it's because the translation was amiss or the stories were written so originally. Almost all of them tug the tender strings in your heart. These are everyday happenings in the life of both humans and animals. Be it a sudden sickness in the family, a water snake's life in summer, a farmer's attachment to his cattle, a poor man's anxiety to celebrate an important festival, could easily relate to all of them. Xaviercota, the translator of Teresas's Man and other stories from Goa, is a teacher, former banker, and sports administrator who translates fiction and non-fiction from Konkani to English. He has previously translated two major works of Mauzo, namely These Are My Children and the novella Tsunami Simon. He has compiled this book too with great care, bringing to readers tales which are compellingly local in their flavor as they are universal in the ideas and emotions they evoke. This book is packed with a lot of social and political punches. It's touching, warm, moving, and so is a must-read. While Mauzo and his close contemporaries have consistently won Sahitya Academy Awards and national recognition, it's only recently that a substantial corpus of their work has begun to appear in English translation. Teresas's Man and Other Stories from Goa was nominated for the Frank O'Connor International Award in 2015. This definitely indicates that contemporary Goan Konkani writing merits far greater attention than it usually gets. Teresas's Man makes for prismatic reading as Mozos' writerly eye perches on a dazzling variety of shoulders. His brilliant writing has proved that irrespective of changing times, our emotions have remained the same whether we live in a city or live in a village. Human emotions are invariably the same across all states, countries, and cultures, and these genuine emotions always inspire. Hope you liked this review. As mentioned in the beginning, you will get to listen to reviews of regional language books written by famous Indian authors. All you have to do is send me the list of books you want me to review at books.combysubhashini@gmail.com, and you know where to find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to share your comments. Thank you for staying tuned till the end. See you in the next episode of Books.com. Till then, sayonara.